These are 10 teenagers who sat in court and got handed life sentences. Some of them laughed, some of them smiled at the victims' families, some of them said nothing at all. This is how each one reacted the moment they found out they were never coming home. Case 1. On August 14th, 2023, in Las Vegas, 64-year-old Andreas Probst, a retired police chief from Bell, California, was out for his morning bike ride in Centennial Hills. Two teenagers in a stolen Hyundai Elantra had decided this looked fun. 17-year-old Jesus Ayala was driving. 16-year-old Jazimir Keys was in the passenger seat with his phone already recording. In the video, you could hear someone yell, "Hit his ass," right before Ayala swerved directly into Probst from behind. They left him on the side of the road and drove away. He died from his injuries. About an hour earlier, they had already tried to hit a 72-year-old cyclist who managed to escape. After Probst, they stole 2 more cars. They posted the video to social media themselves, and it spread fast. That was ultimately what led police back to them. Ayala was a documented member of the Nightcrawlers gang. Both were charged as adults for murder, attempted murder, and additional felonies. Throughout multiple hearings over the next 2 years, they sat in court, smiling, laughing, and making obscene gestures at the Probst family. The judge had to formally address their behavior. In October 2025, both pleaded guilty to second-degree murder with a deadly weapon. Sentencing was December 16, 2025. Judge Jacqueline Bluth handed down the maximum allowable under Nevada law for juvenile offenders. Ayala got 20 years to life. Keys got 18 years to life. Neither said a word. His widow, Crystal, told the courtroom that they did not just kill Andy, they filmed his murder and released it to the world. Taylor said her dad would never get to be there for any of the moments that mattered. His son Michael said he kept thinking none of it would have happened if the defendants had known even one parent like his father. The family also has a wrongful death lawsuit against both men and Hyundai, alleging a defect in the Elantra made it easy to steal. If you thought that was bad, the next case is an even bigger nightmare. Case 2. February 27, 2012, Chardon, Ohio. 17-year-old Thomas Lane, known as TJ, was not a student at Chardon High School, but he showed up there that morning because he attended Lake Academy Alternative School nearby and rode a shared bus that stopped at Chardon first. He walked into the cafeteria while students were waiting for class, pulled out a .22 caliber handgun, and fired 10 rounds. 3 students died: Daniel Parmator, 16, Demetrius Hewlin, 16, and Russell King Jr., 17. Nick Wolchak, 17, was shot 4 times and then chased down the hallway, where Lane fired the last bullet into his neck. Wolchak survived but was left paralyzed from the waist down. 2 others were also wounded. Lane was arrested near his car outside the school the same day. When asked why he did it, he said he did not know. He was charged as an adult, pleaded guilty in February 2013 to 3 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of attempted aggravated murder, and felonious assault. Sentencing was March 19, 2013. Here is where it got truly unhinged. Lane arrived in a blue button-down shirt, sat down, and started unbuttoning it. Underneath was a white t-shirt with the word "killer" written across the front in black marker, matching a shirt he had actually bought himself 7 days before the shooting. Gasps went through the courtroom. His own attorney, Ian Friedman, had absolutely no idea. Investigators determined he most likely got up in the middle of the night before sentencing to write on it, using the rubber pen inmates are given for commissary forms. When given the chance to speak, he turned toward the families and delivered something so obscene and vile that it is barely printable, then flipped the entire courtroom off and laughed. He smirked through every single victim impact statement. Nick Wolchak's mother, Holly, looked Lane straight in the eye while he grinned at her and told him he was really lucky there were so many police in that room. Judge David Fury sentenced him to 3 consecutive life terms without any possibility of parole. But if that one did something to you, the next case is a 16-year-old who shot a police officer 5 times and left him there. Case 3. Late night, February 21st, 2011, South Street, Petersburg, Florida. 46-year-old Officer David Crawford responded to a call about a suspicious person near Tropicana Field. Someone reported a man who had jumped their fence. Crawford got out of his cruiser, walked towards 16-year-old Nicholas Lindsay, who had been breaking into cars nearby and was trying to steal a white Dodge Neon with a screwdriver. Crawford held only a notepad. Lindsay pulled out a gun he had bought for $140 and fired until it was completely empty. 5 shots. Crawford was hit every single time. He died at the scene. Over 200 officers from agencies across Tampa Bay poured into the area to find Lindsay. Tips from the community the following night led police to a home where they arrested him. He already had prior arrests for burglary and auto theft. He was tried as an adult for first-degree murder. His defense argued he was a scared kid who panicked. Under Florida law at the time, life without parole was the only sentence available. In October 2013, a resentencing hearing was required after a U.S. Supreme Court ruling held that mandatory life without parole for juveniles was unconstitutional. Judge Thane Covert spent over an hour reading his 27-page written decision aloud, and at the end, upheld the life sentence. The moment he finished, Lindsay looked up at the ceiling, rubbed his chin, and smiled. Case 4. Okay, so this one is probably the most recent case on this list, and honestly one of the hardest to wrap your head around, because Carly Gregg was just 14 years old when all of this happened. Carly lived with her mother, Ashley Smiley, a 40-year-old math teacher, and her stepfather Heath, in Brandon, Mississippi. Normal household by all accounts. But on March 19, 2024, one of Carly's friends told Ashley about her marijuana use, and apparently that was enough to set everything in motion. That same day, Carly went into the master bedroom, grabbed a .357 Magnum that Heath had gifted Ashley, hid it behind her back, and walked toward her mother. The kitchen surveillance camera captured her pacing through the house with the gun concealed, then the sound of gunshots. Ashley was shot twice in the face and did not survive. After the shooting, Carly texted a friend to come over. When that friend arrived, Carly asked if she was squeamish around dead bodies, then showed her Ashley on the floor. She then texted Heath to come home, and when he walked through the door, she shot him in the shoulder. He wrestled the gun away and she fled. Officers found her near the house shortly after, covered in blood. At trial, the defense argued mental health crisis, pointing to depression, self-harm, hallucinations, and a journal entry from a week before describing a psychotic break. The prosecution responded with a text Carly had sent months earlier, saying she had almost murdered her parents that day. The jury deliberated 2 hours and returned guilty on all counts. Worth noting, she had turned down a 40-year plea deal before any of this went to trial. She sobbed at the verdict, then went completely silent at sentencing. Life in prison, plus 10 years for evidence tampering. But if that was hard to sit with, the next one involves a guy who spent 6 months driving around at night, specifically looking for someone to kill, just to see what it felt like. Case 5. Brian Cohey grew up in Grand Junction, Colorado, and by high school his classmates had already given him a nickname. They called him Dahmer, as in Jeffrey Dahmer. Cohey had been diagnosed with ADHD, major depressive disorder, and autism. In 2018, he killed a cat and kept its head in his bedroom for 3 days. By early 2021, those thoughts had shifted to murder, and he spent 6 months driving at night, scoping out homeless encampments for someone he believed no one would miss. On February 27, 2021, he spotted 69-year-old Warren Barnes sleeping under a bridge near Crosby Avenue. People downtown called him the reading man because he was always outside a bridal shop with a paperback. Cohey put on 3 layers of gloves, grabbed a 12-inch kitchen knife, and stabbed him in the neck while he slept. Barnes woke up screaming and Cohey kept going, later telling investigators he was growling and making animalistic noises the entire time. He decapitated Barnes, removed his hands, and drove home. The next day, he tried to dump the remains in the Colorado River, but his car slid into the water. Police pulled it out, noticed red liquid dripping from the trunk, and let him go. The next morning, his mother, Terry, went into his closet, found a heavy plastic bag, opened it, and found maggots. She called her husband, then 911. Cohey walked outside and immediately confessed. He said he had always wondered what murder felt like, and told investigators he felt sort of neutral about the whole thing afterward. At the verdict, Cohey was smiling and visibly relaxed before the jury entered. When guilty was read, he showed nothing. At sentencing, more than 30 of Warren's loved ones wept at the podium while Cohey sat stone-faced. His mother Terry stood up, shaking and sobbing, apologized to Warren's family, and begged for mercy. Judge Richard Gurley, 37 years in the court system, called it one of the most horrific cases he had ever encountered. Life without parole, plus 13.5 years for evidence tampering. And okay, Cohey at least kept it to himself, but the next guy was telling people ahead of time. Case 6. Aidan Fucci and Tristan Bailey were classmates in St. Johns County, Florida. Tristan was 13, a cheerleader, the youngest of 5 kids, and by every account, a bright, outgoing person. Fucci was 14. They knew each other the way neighborhood kids do, familiar but not close. In the months leading up to May 9th, 2021, Fucci had been telling people he planned to take someone into the woods, stab them, and run. He told his girlfriend and peers, and nobody said a word to an adult. So, on Mother's Day night, Fucci walked out of a friend's house with Tristan, led her into the woods in Durbin Crossing, and stabbed her 114 times. She had 49 defensive wounds on her hands and arms. Surveillance caught them walking at 1:45 in the morning, and a later recording showed Fucci running back alone with his shoes in his hand. The next day, while police questioned him as a witness, Fucci posted a photo from the back of a patrol car throwing up a peace sign with the caption, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristan lately?" Investigators found bloody clothes in his room and blood in the sink drain. His mother, Crystal Smith, was caught on the home's security camera washing blood off his jeans that evening, later charged with evidence tampering and sentenced to 30 days in jail. Fucci pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in February 2023, right before jury selection began. At sentencing, Tristan's sister Alexis placed an empty jar on the podium, said 114, and dropped aqua-colored stone hearts in one by one. 2 full minutes of silence. Tristan's mother Stacy told Fucci he is beyond saving and had destroyed her family. Fucci sat through all of it and showed nothing. Judge R. Lee Smith said the crime had no motive, done purely so Fucci could feel what it was like to kill someone. Life in prison, eligible for review in 25 years. State Attorney R.J. Laritza said if Fucci had never been caught, Tristan would not have been the last. Case 7. October 23, 2016. Ann Arbor, Michigan. 18-year-old Jordan Klee was a senior at Pioneer High School, a high-achieving student and football athlete who had his entire future in front of him. He never made it through that day. A maintenance worker found him shot and killed on a path near Pine Lake Village apartments on the west side of the city. It was Ann Arbor's first homicide of 2016. 17-year-old Danta Wright, along with 2 other teenagers, had ambushed Klee at gunpoint in a robbery attempt. Wright shot him in the back of the head. All 3 eventually pleaded guilty for their roles in the killing. At sentencing in July 2017 in Washtenaw County, Wright was given the chance to address the court. And instead of any remorse whatsoever, he turned toward Jordan Klee's grieving family and said, "I just wanted to tell y'all, I'll be home soon. I'll be all right. I love my family." He had also been sitting there smiling and laughing the entire time Jordan's cousin Courtney read his mother's victim impact statement aloud. His mother had written that she lost her only child, her son, her baby, her friend, that she lost laughter and love, that she no longer had the hope of having grandchildren. She lost the enjoyment of holidays and birthdays and everyday life. Judge David Swartz stopped everything. He told the court he had never in his 23 years of prosecuting failed to accept a sentencing agreement both parties had bargained for. But watching Wright sit there smiling and laughing and shaking his head like it was no big deal, he said he was very tempted to throw the whole plea deal out and send it to trial. He told Wright directly that if convicted of felony murder at trial, he would go to prison for the rest of his life and die there. Klee's family chose not to pursue a trial. They said they wanted to try and move forward. Wright was sentenced to 23 to 50 years for second-degree murder, armed robbery, and felony firearm. That judge came this close to blowing the entire deal up on the spot. But the next case is a 15-year-old girl who convinced her ex-boyfriend to sneak out and come see her, and when he walked through that door, 5 people were waiting for him. Case 8. April 17, 2011. Summerfield, Florida. 15-year-old Seth Jackson got a text from his ex-girlfriend Amber Wright. She told him she wanted to work things out, asked him to come meet her, and told him to keep it between them. Seth showed up to the home of Amber's friend Charlie Ely that evening, and he had no idea what was already waiting inside. Amber's 18-year-old boyfriend Michael Bargo, her 16-year-old stepbrother Kyle Hooper, and 20-year-old Justin Soto were all inside. The group jumped Seth, beat him, and shot him multiple times with a .22 caliber firearm. He was placed in a sleeping bag and burned in a backyard fire pit for hours. The next morning, the remains were shoveled into 5-gallon paint buckets, weighed down with cinder blocks, and dumped into a water-filled rock quarry in Ocala. Kyle Hooper told his mother what had happened and she called police. All 5 were arrested within days. The investigating detective described Amber Wright as the most dangerous 15-year-old he had ever encountered. Her first conviction was overturned on appeal in 2014 over a Miranda rights issue. She was retried in January 2016, convicted again, and on February 23, 2016, Circuit Judge Anthony Tati sentenced her to life with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Before handing down the sentence, Tati told the court he had not seen or heard anything more despicable than what led to Seth Jackson's death, and said he could not imagine a circumstance any worse. He said he prayed the reason behind all of it was some chemical imbalance or a brain that had not matured, because it was really hard to deal with the notion that such evil could exist without an explanation. Seth's mother Sonia read her statement aloud at the sentencing and asked the judge to send Amber to prison for life. Now, the next one is where the footage is genuinely hard to watch, because the whole thing was caught on the school's own surveillance cameras and played back in court. Case 9. October 22, 2013, Danvers, Massachusetts. 14-year-old Philip Chisholm had recently moved from Clarksville, Tennessee, and was a freshman at Danvers High School. His math teacher, Colleen Ritzer, 24 years old and in her second year of teaching, stayed after class to help struggling students. A classmate heard her complimenting a drawing Chisholm had done and asking him to stay after. The school's surveillance cameras captured everything. Ritzer walked toward a second-floor bathroom at around 2:45. About a minute later, Chisholm followed her in with his hood up and gloves already on. Shortly after, another student opened the door and immediately walked back out, telling investigators later she thought someone was changing clothes inside. Chisholm strangled Ritzer, stabbed her at least 16 times with a box cutter he brought to school, and raped her. He then retrieved a green recycling bin, loaded her body into it, rolled it out of the building, and dragged it into the woods where he slit her throat. A handwritten note near her body read, "I hate you all." He then used her stolen credit card at a Wendy's and bought a movie ticket. Police found him walking along a highway early the next morning with her blood still on his hands. When asked whose blood it was, he said, "The girl." He was tried as an adult, convicted in December 2015 of first-degree murder, aggravated rape, and armed robbery. At sentencing in February 2016, Chisholm showed zero emotion as Judge David Lowy spoke. 9 people gave victim impact statements. Tom Ritzer said he felt he had failed his daughter, that a dad's job was to fix things, and he could not fix this. Her brother Dan asked the judge to put this animal behind bars. Her mother Peggy delivered a 32-minute statement and said Chisholm was pure evil, and pure evil could never be rehabilitated. Chisholm stared straight ahead through every word. Because he was a juvenile, he received 25 years on the murder and 40 years concurrent for rape and robbery, meaning he will not be eligible for parole until he is 54. Total, absolute silence through every single word of that. The last case on this list is completely different from every other one because she was famous first, and the whole country watched her go from one of the most recognized teenagers in America to crying in a Florida courtroom. Case 10. Back in 2007, Jennifer Mee was 15 years old and living in St. Petersburg, Florida, when she developed a case of hiccups that would not stop. Not for days, not for weeks. She was hiccuping up to 50 times a minute for 5 straight weeks, and national television came calling. She appeared on NBC's Today Show multiple times, tried everything from sugar and peanut butter to hypnotists, and she could barely eat or sleep. She became briefly famous across the country as the Hiccup Girl. The hiccups eventually stopped after she was treated with medication used for Tourette syndrome. And just like that, the attention stopped with them. Then, in October 2010, when Mee was 19, she connected on a social networking site with a 22-year-old Walmart employee named Shannon Griffin, who had recently moved to Florida. She arranged to meet him in person, telling him she wanted to buy marijuana from him. She led him around to the back of a vacant home on the 500 block of 7th Street North in St. Petersburg, where her roommates and co-defendants, Laron Ryford and Lamont Newton, who was also her boyfriend, were already waiting with a .38 caliber handgun. Griffin tried to fight back. He was shot 4 times in the chest and was robbed of less than $50. He died there. All 3 were arrested within hours. At trial in September 2013, prosecutors played a jailhouse phone call Mee had made to her mother from jail. Her mother asked why she had been charged with murder. Mee said she did not kill anyone, but then told her mother she had set everything up, that it all went wrong and just went downhill. The jury deliberated 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict for first-degree murder under Florida's felony murder rule. When the verdict was read, Mee wept and held her head in her hands. Pinellas County Judge Nancy Moate-Lay sentenced her immediately to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was still crying as they led her out. Outro. 10 cases, 10 life sentences, and not a single one of them reacted the way you would expect a person to. If this video made you feel something, drop it in the comments. And if you want more cases like these, the next video is already